The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, but it wasn't warmth I felt. It was the cold sting of being tolerated. My daughter Evelyn had insisted on hosting Christmas in her oversized house this year. She said, "It's easier for everyone if you just come here, Mom. Don't strain yourself." But I knew what that meant. I wasn't welcome to host anymore. The home I had spent decades filling with memories was now treated as if it were too small, too outdated, too old woman for them. I arrived early in my best green dress that Charles had once loved on me, clutching a tin of cookies I had baked the night before, even though my hands ached from arthritis. The moment I walked through the door, I felt like an uninvited guest. My granddaughter wrinkled her nose and whispered. She brought her old cookies again. Evelyn smirked, kissed the air near my cheek without touching me, and said, "Mom, just sit over there. Don't worry, we've got everything covered. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." The house buzzed with laughter and the clink of wine glasses. Evelyn's husband bragged about his new car. My grandson boasted about his new phone. They passed plates of food, poured champagne, and made jokes that felt rehearsed. I sat quietly at the end of the table, my tin of cookies unopened, my presence ignored. Every time I tried to speak, Evelyn cut me off with a loud story about herself, making sure no one heard my voice. And then it happened. Evelyn stood, a sly grin on her face, and said, "Oh, wait, we forgot Mom's gift." She disappeared into the kitchen, and when she returned, she held a small box wrapped in cheap paper. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe she had remembered something kind, something thoughtful. I opened the box with trembling hands, and inside was a bag of dog biscuits. The room erupted with laughter. My son-in-law slapped the table, nearly spilling his drink. My grandson pulled out his phone to record my reaction. Evelyn leaned down, close enough for her perfume to sting my nose, and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Eat with someone on your level, Mom." The words hit harder than any slap. My throat closed, my cheeks burned. I looked down at those hard brown biscuits, shaped like little bones, and for a second the world blurred. My family, my blood, had reduced me to an animal for their entertainment. I could hear them snickering, clapping each other on the back, reveling in my humiliation. I swallowed hard, placed the box back on the table, and smiled faintly. "Thank you," I said softly. The laughter grew louder, mistaking my calm for defeat. But inside, something shifted, sharp and cold. I watched them continue to laugh, watched my grandson upload the video to his friends, watched Evelyn bask in her cruelty as if she had won. They didn't see what I saw, my own reflection in the window, my face calm, but my eyes alive with fire. I sat in silence the rest of the evening, listening, watching, memorizing. I ate nothing, drank nothing, spoke nothing. To them, I had disappeared into the background, like an old piece of furniture. But as the lights glowed and the carols played, I made a decision I had never dared to make before. Evelyn thought giving me dog biscuits was the height of her cruelty. She thought reducing me to a punchline was her victory. But by the time this Christmas was over, she would learn what it meant to be left with nothing. The laughter around that table still echoed in my head long after the plates had been cleared and the gifts had been unwrapped. I sat in the corner of the living room while everyone else crowded near the fireplace, sipping wine and tearing into expensive gadgets. My green dress felt tighter against my chest, not from fabric, but from the way humiliation sat like a stone beneath my ribs. Evelyn paraded around the room in her glittering red dress, the host, the queen, the woman who had reduced her own mother to a punchline. Every so often, she'd glance at me with that little smirk, making sure the memory of the dog biscuits wasn't forgotten. I traced the wrinkles on my hand, the veins raised against my thin skin, and thought about the years I had given her. The nights I went hungry so she could eat seconds. The hours I spent patching holes in her dresses so she could look pretty at school. The way I defended her when neighbors complained about her sharp tongue and selfishness. All those sacrifices had led to this night. My daughter, my flesh and blood, shoving me into the shadows with cruelty disguised as humor. Around 9, I excused myself, claiming I was tired. No one protested. No one looked up. I climbed the stairs to the guest room where they'd tossed my coat earlier. The room smelled faintly of paint, as if they'd only just finished preparing it for show. On the dresser sat the cookies I had brought, untouched. I picked up the tin, my fingers trembling. For a moment, tears threatened to fall, but then I set the tin down carefully and looked at my reflection in the mirror. That reflection didn't look broken. It looked alive. My eyes, my husband Charles used to say they were too sharp for anyone to lie to, gleamed with something I hadn't seen in years. Not defeat, not sorrow. Resolve. I opened my purse and pulled out the small set of keys I always carried, the ones Evelyn assumed had no use anymore. She believed she had control of everything, my house, my savings, even my life. What she never understood was that Charles had built walls of protection around me long before he died. He never trusted Evelyn with money, never trusted her with power. He left every safeguard in place under my name alone. All these years I had let her think she was in charge because I was too tired to fight. But tonight, after those dog biscuits, after that laughter, something inside me snapped clean. I stayed upstairs for a long time, the muffled sounds of their merriment seeping through the floorboards. I could hear my grandson laughing as he replayed the video of me opening the box, his friends on the other end of the call roaring with amusement. Evelyn's voice carried over it all, smug and high, the same voice she'd used as a teenager when she got away with something cruel. But she wasn't getting away this time. By midnight, the guests began to leave, their voices trailing off into the night. I stayed put, sitting quietly in the guest room, my hands folded over my lap, my mind racing with details. Evelyn didn't know the paperwork I carried in my purse, the papers I had signed months ago when Charles's lawyer insisted I prepare for the worst. She didn't know that every asset she flaunted, the cars, the house, the very jewelry around her neck, were still legally tethered to me. She had been living in a castle built on sand, and tonight I finally felt strong enough to let the tide roll in. The house fell into silence around 1 a.m. I heard Evelyn's footsteps as she stumbled toward her room, tipsy and humming a carol under her breath. The door closed, and for the first time all night, I allowed myself to smile. I slipped my coat on, picked up the tin of cookies, and walked downstairs. The dog biscuits still sat on the table, abandoned, forgotten after their moment of cruelty. I looked at them once, then swept them into the trash where they belonged. My hand lingered on the counter for a moment, feeling the cool stone beneath my fingertips. This wasn't her house. Not truly. She thought it was, but she had no idea how close she was to losing it all. I opened the front door and stepped into the freezing air. Snow had begun to fall again, soft and silent. My breath rose in clouds before me as I walked down the steps, keys cold in my hand. I felt lighter than I had in years. Back in the distance, the house glowed with warm lights and decorations, a picture-perfect holiday scene. But soon, Evelyn would learn that Christmas gifts can turn into curses. She had wanted to humiliate me with dog biscuits. She had wanted to make me eat like an animal in front of the family. She had forgotten one thing. Animals bite back, and before long she would be the one chewing on the taste of nothing. Christmas morning came with silence. I rose before dawn, the cold light of winter bleeding through the curtains, and boiled water for tea. My hands shook not from weakness, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I laid the leather folder on the kitchen table, the one Evelyn had mocked when she caught me once guarding it like treasure. She laughed. What could an old woman possibly have worth protecting? She was about to find out. By 7, the house stirred. Evelyn stumbled into the kitchen in her silk robe, hair messy, eyes heavy with sleep but still carrying that smugness in her smirk. "Well, look who's up early," she said, yawning. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll get the dog something to eat later. Maybe he'll share with you." She laughed at her own cruelty and reached for the coffee pot. I slid the folder across the table. "Merry Christmas, Evelyn." She frowned, opening it without hesitation, expecting something pathetic. Maybe letters, maybe a recipe. Instead, her eyes skimmed the titles. The deed to the house, the bank statements, the transfer papers with fresh signatures. Each line seemed to drain the color from her face. What is this?" I sipped my tea calmly. It's everything you thought was yours. The house, the cars, the accounts you parade around with like trophies. They're mine. They've always been mine. And now, they're no longer in your reach." She laughed nervously, waving the papers as if they were fake. "You're bluffing. These don't mean anything. Everyone knows this is my house." "Do they?" I cut in, my voice sharp enough to slice the room in half. "Because as of last night, it isn't. The lawyer filed the final paperwork. The accounts are sealed under my name. Your credit card's tied to those accounts. Frozen. The mortgage you bragged about paying, canceled. It was never in your name to begin with." Her smirk fell, replaced by a trembling in her lips. You can't do this to me. Not on Christmas. What about the kids? What about—" I leaned forward, my eyes burning into hers. "You humiliated me in front of them, handed me dog biscuits, told me to eat with something on my level. Do you know what that makes you, Evelyn? It makes you the dog, and today I'm the one holding the leash." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Her husband entered the kitchen then, groggy, only to see her standing pale, papers trembling in her hands. "What's going on?" he asked. She took everything," Evelyn whispered, tears finally spilling down her face. "Everything." He looked at me, then at her, disgust etched into his features. "You told everyone this was yours. You lied." He turned his back on her, shaking his head, leaving her crumbling in the kitchen. I stood, folding my coat over my arm. "You wanted me to eat dog food on Christmas, Evelyn. Instead, you'll be the one learning to beg. Consider this my gift to you." Her knees buckled and she sank into the chair, sobbing, clutching the papers as if she could squeeze the ink away. I walked past her, opened the front door, and stepped into the morning air. Snowflakes landed on my hair, cool and clean, melting into freedom. Behind me, the house that Evelyn thought she owned was no longer hers. Behind me, the family that laughed at my humiliation sat in the ruins of their arrogance. Ahead of me was silence, peace, and the knowledge that I hadn't just taken back my dignity, I had taken everything. On Christmas Day, my daughter gave me dog biscuits and said, "Eat with someone on your level." By the next morning, she was left with nothing, and I finally felt full. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.